Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I would like to say thank you to everyone for coming to my presentation. It's great to see you, and thank you for my lecture, Miss Yuna. In this opportunity, I would explain about communication patterns of intercultural communication, case study at native and foreigners employees of McDonald's Green Garden brands. Let me introduce myself first. My name is RETNOWATI with the number of student 2017-0502-124. First thing first, I will explain about the definition of intercultural communication. The reality of intercultural communication refers to the diversity of cultures in society, where each culture has its own way of communicating. Therefore, it is possible that potential problems will arise when the communicant enters a different environment as a newcomer and brings his culture to interact in his new social environment. This is viewed from the aspect of communication will affect the overall process of sending and receiving messages between two or more people, or it's called the pattern of intercultural communication in the community. The theory in this study used the symbolic interaction theory, which was developed in 1920s and 1930s by George Herbert Mead when he was professor of philosophy at the University of Chicago. Initially, this theory developed within the scope of sociology, which was later modified by Herbert Blumer around 1939 in order to achieve certain goals. Social interaction and foreigners. First, I will explain about the definition of social interaction. Social interaction is a process that is carried out by each person when he acts in a relationship with other people. Johnson, 1989. And foreigners. In Indonesia, many migrants flock to other areas, one of which is triggered by uneven development in the area more concentrated in big cities. So that this has become one of the triggers of great interest for migrants to emigrate and look for jobs in other areas. The areas targeted by immigrants are usually big cities or developing areas. Next, I have communication pattern. The communication pattern is identical to the communication process because the communication pattern is a part of a series of activities to convey messages so that feedback is obtained from the recipient of the message. The pattern of communication that becomes concept to be analyzed consists of several kinds, namely, first, primary communication pattern is a process of conveying thoughts by the communicator to the communicant by using a symbol as a medium or channel. Second, I have secondary communication pattern. The secondary communication pattern was inspired by the simple communication created by Aristotle, which later influenced Harold D. Laswell, 1948, which is also known as Laswell's formula. Third, I have linear communication pattern. Delivery of message by the communicator to the communicant as a terminal point. Linear communication patterns usually occur in mediated communication, but also sometimes occur in face-to-face communication, but in passive communication. Fourth, circular communication pattern. In this circular process, feedback occurs, namely flow from the communicant to the communicator as the main determinant of the success of communication. In a communication pattern like this, namely the communication process continues, namely the existence of feedback between the communicator and the communicant. Circular communication paradigm was created by Osgood and Scrum in 1954. This model describes communication as a dynamic process. The process takes place continuously and communication actors, namely communicator and communicants, have an equal position so that communication can take place or end anytime and anywhere. Based on Changara 2010, page 46. And then from the foreigners, natives, and will happen intercultural communication and then created a new communication pattern. And for the McDonald Green Garden, the communication pattern has been processed, and based on the concept of the communication, it can be concluded that the pattern of intercultural communication that occurs in a circular communication. So, in the McDonald Green Garden, the communication pattern of the intercultural communication is circular communication pattern. This pattern is more focused on encoding and decoding that function equally and comparable to function on the source side and to function on the receiving side. The process of sending message from native Jakarta employees and foreign employees gets feedback at that time directly and runs continuously and rotates. Circular communication pattern describes communication as a dynamic process where messages are interpreted through encoding and decoding processes. Encoding is a process of interpreting the message sent by the source, namely the communicant. And decoding is the process of sending the intent meaning through the message carried out by the communicator. As the dynamic process, interpreters are native Jakarta employees and foreign employees can double as senders and receivers of message. In the early stage, the source functions as an encoder and the receiver as a decoder. But in the next stage, the receiver functions as a sender or encoder and source as a receiver or decoder. In other words, the first source will become the second receiver and the first receiver will function as the second source and so on. Okay. It's enough for me, and thank you very much for your listening. May all those I have shared be beneficial for all of us. I'm Jimika, and goodbye.